This PSA was brought to you by the Peter G Show.
You may have second thoughts after the show.
Don't drink the Foster.
We're really talented. We should get Oscars.
Just pick out a car, for Christ's sake.
No, hi, my name is Peter. Yeah, I want. Here's good.
Yeah.
Madam Perry.
I need to get back in the genie bottle.
Louis from Pennsylvania, you're on.
He likes it. It's showtime.
Peter G Show, Peter G Show, divorced dad, single dad, divorced dad, single dad, Peter G Show.
That's right, it's showtime. Wednesday, right here. Life with Peter G, the Peter G Show. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and for those who will be tuning in, watching in the near future, watching on demand, and watching definitely live. You are appreciated. How the hell is everybody? As always, I hope everybody's doing really well. Let's go over to start with the comments. Hey, Dan, they're already starting in. Way to go, Mollye. She's not even on the show yet, and it's way to go, Mollye. Hey, Pete. Hey, Paul, my IT department. Sorry, I'm already. It's gonna be one of those days because it's. I'll tell you in a minute. I'll tell you in a minute. Anyway, I hope everybody's doing well. We do have a great show tonight, and that's why I think everybody's all hyped up, or getting ready to be hyped up, and gonna be hyped up tonight. From Northwest Florida, part of the country, one of my favorite parts of the whole wide world, and I've been around the world in a lot of places, but this place is still closest to my heart. From Northwest Florida, the Gulf Coast of Florida, tonight, I'm going to have investigative journalist, author, and podcaster host of Gulf Coast Confidential, Miss Mollye Barrows, on this show tonight. So pop the popcorn, get you a glass of wine, hurry up and use the restroom, and buckle up, because I got questions. And we're like homies, and we don't even know it. She has people that know my people, and someday we'll do lunch. But it's going to be a great show tonight. She is pro. She's got stories. And I'm going to be asking her tonight. So you're not going to want to miss that coming up in a few minutes. But I want to talk about just a quick couple of things. If that's okay. Over here in Southern California, I don't know if any of you heard, but last weekend we had a hurricane threat and tropical storm. That's right. Here in Southern California, hurricane. For those of you Floridians and Southerners, they didn't know nothing about a hurricane party, number one. And it was wannabes. Waffle House. We don't even have a Waffle House, so you can't even ask Waffle House how bad the hurricane is going to be. Inside joke for those who know, you know. But we had a tropical storm, and this place doesn't get a lot of rain, so it was great. But thank God, as the hurricane came further up the Pacific Ocean from Mexico and all that, the water started cooling down. And then as it came inland around San Diego, we got some good heavy rain, which was great. Bad for some people, a lot of washouts in the area, in the mountains, and people who suffered from fires and stuff over the past couple of years. There's some, look, you're going to get a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's going to happen. But all in all, I had people that were concerned. They go, how you doing over there? It's like, I'm good. Still here. But to top that stuff all off, around 2 p.m. on Sunday, while the rain is coming down, good solid rain. It was great. It washed everything clean. We don't get water to start cleaning up stuff. We had an earthquake. And I'm telling you, I hate earthquakes. I'll take a hurricane over an earthquake any day, although you can't explain that to people who lived only in earthquakes and don't understand hurricanes. But then we had an earthquake about 45, 50 miles away from me, and it was a quick shake. It only lasted, for me, about 7 to 10 seconds. But it definitely got my attention. I'm like a cat. Hair standing up on my arms. Don't like them because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if it's going to take a minute. You don't know if more are going to come back. You don't know how bad it's going to be. Now, in some parts of Southern California where that earthquake was a little bit closer, they showed pictures of drugstores and everything, and things fell down, and it did some damage. It's just amazing how the earth can move, and you're in a big building or a house or whatever, your apartment, and the building makes just these creaking noises, and it's moving. You're moving. Anyway, we had a tropical storm / almost a hurricane and an earthquake at the same time. So we had a hurryquake. Another joke. The jokes are free, by the way. But it was strange. It was definitely strange. We haven't had any serious earthquakes since Northridge in the early 90s, and I was in that one too. Do not like it. That one was the worst of the worst. But cross my fingers, I won't be seeing any of those for a while because they're not that good. But I just wanted to let you know that and so those of you who are going to start, crying climate change and all that, it's like, take a deep breath and sit down. We're not having climate change. This happened also in 1939 or something like that. Not a hurryquake, but a tropical storm / hurricane that came up from the Pacific side. Stuff happens. But I guarantee you, all you people that, I know it's hot as hell down in the Gulf Coast. We'll talk to Mollye about that. And it's been hot as hell. And last year it rained for 2 months, which was unusual. Now you're getting 2 months of heat wave. But I promise you, sometime in the late 90s and the 80s, that stuff happened also. We just forget really quick. We're living in the moment and life is so busy and you forget. But anyway, that's what happened. So moving right along, I just want to enlighten you and current events right here live on Life of Peter G, the Peter G Show, every Wednesday, like clockwork, 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, and 9 p.m. on the East Coast, God willing. All right? I tell you I love you guys? I do. All right, so here's what's going to happen. Oh, one last thing. Maui, still prayers for them, because God knows there's certain people in this world that are not caring so much about that. There's a lot of loss. A lot of controversy going on about what went on over there. And I'm telling you, people, question everything. I don't think there's forces in this world that are doing things for personal gain. And I feel really bad. I don't know. We'll get into that because next week I'm taking this show all by myself and it's going to be a bitch-a-thon. Hi, my name is Peter. Glad you can make it. But anyway, I just feel bad for these people. They lost everything, and there's hundreds of lives still unaccounted for. And, and regardless of whether you had a fire in your kitchen that almost took your, 20 minutes to put out or something, these people lost it all. So prayers for them. And I hope that the recovery, which is not going to be anytime too soon, is going to be in their favor and not somebody else's. But we'll talk about that next week and the weeks to come because it isn't over. It's just beginning. Okay, here's what's going on. Where am I? Coming up in about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something like that. I don't know. Lost track of time. We're going to be bringing podcast show host Miss Mollye Barrows from Gulf Coast Confidential on the show. But first, want to hear a little something from my good friends over at Clean Star Products with their money-saving fuel additive DX1 driver. So I'll be right back.
Let us help you with the high price of fuel. Hello, I'm Ty Thompson at CleanStarProducts.com. We can optimize your engine, saving you money in gas. Here's how. Our program works the same with gasoline and diesel engines. Whether you're using a car pack or SUV pack, the instructions are the same. Add 1 bottle to your engine oil, and each time you change your oil, add 1 bottle to the fuel tank each and every fuel fill-up. It's that easy. You get 10% fuel economy on average, lower emissions, and increased horsepower. DX1 sells for $2 an ounce, so for just a few dollars a fuel tank, you can optimize your engine, saving you money and gas. Come on, give it a try. It's the finest green grade oil in the world from a California environmental company. You're gonna feel it when you drive. Order online today, we'll get it out right away. CleanStarProducts.com/shop.
That's right, Clean Star Products. They actually have something that works, people. If you want more information, go to www.cleanstarproducts.com. They'll talk to you. It makes sense to save money. And importantly, they actually know what I do and they still sponsor me. So please let them know you saw it on the Peter G Show, all right? Because I don't want them to think I'm slacking off or nothing like that. But please do it. Next. All right. As promised, in just about a minute or so, because I'm going to give you a little preview of what Mollye Barrows is all about, and then we're going to bring her on in the flesh. So I hope everybody's settled in and ready to rock because, like I said, I got questions. But here, check out this little something we got, and then we're going to bring her on, and we're going to put the screws to her. We're going to get that information we need. All right? All right.
Hi, I'm Mollye Barrows, and I've been reporting on some of the saltier stories that surface in Northwest Florida for more than 20 years now. Welcome to my investigative series, Gulf Coast Confidential. This story is literally a chapter out of a book I'm writing about a gruesome murder case where a 17-year-old boy killed his mother. In researching this case, I found some investigative reports that reveal to me some very concerning behavior when it comes to the safety of children in public schools. This story also gives some important background on the murder of a popular middle school science teacher by her own son. Here's Confessions in the Fieldhouse. I'm investigative journalist Mollye Barrows. For years, I've covered the stories that made headlines in Northwest Florida and all along the Gulf Coast. Murders, missing persons, and mysteries of all kinds. These cases are far from over for many victims because the full story has yet to surface. Join me for Gulf Coast Confidential, where I dive into the saltier side of the South and expose the lies, greed, and corruption that often weighs down the truth. It's time to turn the tide and get a shot at justice.
That's right. Mollye Barrows coming on in seconds. Are you chomping at the bit yet? Should be. That's my little teaser. But before she comes on, I just want to remind you, have you subscribed to my YouTube channel yet? Have you? Well, why not? It's free. Just go over to YouTube, Google Peter G Show, brings you right up to it, and hit the subscribe button. It'll notify you every time a show is on. You can watch it on demand. There's over 300 shows and counting, all different topics. And again, I love the ones that take the time to watch the shows, but if you're on the go and busy, take an earbud, put it in your ear while you're driving, while you're at work, because we all know work is boring. Google Peter G Show podcast. Take the audio version. It's on like 27 different platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, you name it. And just take the show on the road with you. It's the next best thing to being there. Just wanted to throw that in because it's shows like this that you're going to be watching that you need to be involved in. Take the initiative. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. They're killing me over there. Let's do it one person at a time. And now, without further delay, I'm sure they're going, come on. Let's go. Bring on the dancing girls. All right, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, from the Gulf Coast of Northwest Florida, Miss Mollye Barrows. Ta-da. How are you?
That was the best introduction I think I've ever had, Peter. That was amazing. Thank you.
Really? Well, thank you. It's not hard to do because you had an introduction worthy of. So I put that little bit of a teaser or a little promo to give everybody who doesn't know you, but about what you do and what you're doing, But you're pretty popular over there in Northwest Florida in that area because people that I've talked to know all about you. Why don't you just take a second and introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you've been doing and all that fun stuff?
Sure. Yeah, I've been living here on the Northwest Florida coast for so many years now, and I think that's why people know me. They basically watched me grow up. My parents lived in Fort Walton Beach, which is like an hour to the east. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. I'm Florida all day long, good, bad, ugly, or otherwise, and I love it. And I love reporting here. Came up as a journalist in Pensacola, working for the local ABC affiliate. So that's how most people know me, is when I was a reporter and anchor for the local ABC affiliate. And I did mostly courts and crime reporting, but I covered hurricanes, like you talked about earlier, and those are always exciting. And I've done all kinds of national stuff, especially local stuff. But I tell you, I've ended up doing a lot of national coverage of local stories. That's why I ended up doing this podcast, because there's just so many crazy stories that happen right here on the Gulf Coast, and it just has its own unique salty flavor. I mean, crime is everywhere, and we get a lot of the same crimes that other people do, but it's just got that southern flair of weirdness. It's the Florida man stories. It's the Florida woman stories, which can be even weirder than the Florida man stories. So I love it. I love reporting here. I love being in Northwest Florida, and I just love the internet for making it possible for me to stay here and still do what I love and report on all the craziness.
I get it. And, it's funny how you use the saltiness of, because, every time, even my daughter, when we're down there, you see everybody with stickers on the back of their truck, salt laugh,
Yeah. I know. It's kind of predictable, isn't it? I know. But there's it's warm-hearted to be predictable, I guess.
No. It's good. It's, salt life. Everybody loves the Gulf of Mexico. The water is the biggest draw of the whole thing, and the sugar white sands. 80-degree water. I don't even go in the Pacific Ocean over here. It's cold and it's rough and it's rocky, and I don't deal with it. I wait till I go back to Pensacola, and then I live in that water.
Yeah, and you have great white sharks and stuff, and I don't even want to deal with that. But I do. I've actually covered shark attacks here on the Gulf Coast. I don't even know why I'm bringing that up. That actually, not to digress, but the first time I think I ever was on national news was on CNN a million years ago, when a young kid named Jesse Arbogast had his arm bitten off by a shark, and that's not funny. I don't mean to giggle about that. That's horrible, and bless his little heart, it was a terrible thing. But the part that is just so Northwest Florida is that they ended up, the shark was caught in a little pool close to the shore. It had gotten caught between a sandbar and the shore. And so the rumor was that the boy was there with his uncle, and the uncle had been shark fishing. I don't know if that's true or not, but at any rate, the shark had bitten this kid's arm off and gotten a chunk out of his leg. And the shark was still there. And when authorities arrived, and it was still alive, and they wanted to get the boy's arm out of the shark, so they shot the shark. And then they used this police baton to pry its jaws open, and they got the arm out. So they life flighted Jesse Arbogast, and then they transported by ambulance his arm. And he ended up surviving. His life was not the same, bless him, because most of the blood had drained out of his brain. So it caused some disabilities for a while. And I think he's since passed. So I don't mean to be such a downer right off the top of the show. But it was just crazy, going back to just crazy stories that happen along the Gulf Coast, shark attacks. But great whites, I don't know. That's a whole different animal. I just wouldn't even want to. And it's cold and the sand is brown, but it's beautiful. The views are beautiful. Anytime you're on the coast, it's pretty.
Look, I saw just recently there was a hammerhead shark over there in Destin or someplace like that. They're around, but they don't. You don't have seals over there, so the food chain is a little bit different than it is over there. But you've been at it a while. I just love it there, and believe me, it's once I get settled in, it's hard to leave. But then I come back, and I got a life over here too, so I'm just trying to keep that balance. But you've been at it for a long time, and you're an author too. Tell me about the book you wrote, and you said you got one in the making of too. Is that correct?
Yes. So some years ago, there was another crazy murder case, going back to being, getting national attention again. It's just, we used to joke in the newsroom where I worked when I first started reporting that Pensacola was the invisible axis on which the world turns, because so many national stories that happened had a connection. They either came from Pensacola or they were somehow connected to Pensacola. Like, take Susan Smith, for example, who murdered her boys and blamed it on a stranger, and it turned out she was the one that did it to be with her lover. But her husband ended up moving to Pensacola. You name it. There's all kinds of crazy things that happened. But the King brothers was the reason that I ended up writing this true crime novel. I was on the Courts and Crime beat. They murdered their father back in 2001. It was they were the youngest children to be charged as adults at the time in the state of Florida. They were, very young, 11 and 12 years old. It was a very complicated, crazy kind of case. They confessed and they recanted. There was a convicted pedophile, if you will, who had been convicted in a previous case, who was involved with the family and was accused of molesting the younger son. And and that's basically what my book was about. It was called A Perversion of Justice, or it is called, and you can still find it online. But essentially, they wanted to find out why these kids killed their dad. And a lot of people suspected it was because this influence of this particular man that was accused of molesting the younger boy. And anyway, so that was the very first true crime book that I had done. And I'm working on another one now, which is also another case of matricide. That was patricide, where children kill their fathers. And this one is the case of a 17-year-old boy who killed his mom. And the reason I even wrote this story is because the sister of the mother reached out to me. She was a popular middle school teacher, Sharon ate a lot. Her 17-year-old son showed up at her doorstep on Christmas Eve with a knife hidden up his sleeve. And she thought they were going to go to church and do a family dinner. She was divorced from his father. They had just separated a couple of years earlier because the father had lost his job. He'd been fired as a teacher. He was also a teacher, and he'd been fired from his job at Pensacola High School for having an inappropriate relationship with a 14-year-old girl in his science class. So there was just a lot there that would make you wonder, hey, what was going on behind closed doors? Is it just that this kid went crazy because supposedly he was diagnosed with schizophrenia? He was found not guilty by reason of insanity. So the book is really about not just the murder, but what went on before, what happened to this family before this kid did what he did, and what the family is going through now, what Sharon Adelot's relatives have been going through, just trying to deal with the aftermath of not only her death, grieving her death, but this kid comes up for consideration to be released from basically Florida state hospitals where they keep the criminally insane. So every 6 months, if you're found not guilty by reason of insanity, the state of Florida evaluates you, brings you back up before the court, and they're like, do you still meet the criteria to remain in custody, or do you meet the criteria to perhaps move on? So it's just a fascinating situation because, I certainly advocate for people with mental health issues. I mean, I think we all suffer in different ways from issues that affect our mental health. Thankfully, none of us turn to homicide for solutions or hear voices that tell us to kill our parents. But in this case, this is what this kid claimed that he did. And the state of Florida is moving towards allowing him to go into perhaps a group home, basically transition out of Florida State Hospital. And it's gotten me on a path where I've been following other cases of children killing their parents. And tragically, we've had several right here in Northwest Florida. I've been following 3 cases, and one of another man who was a vet, if you will. He was in training. He had a head injury, caused his behavior to change. He was discharged, and he ended up killing his mother on Mother's Day a few years after Brandon Adelot killed his mother, Sharon Adelot, on Christmas Eve. So it's just a strange, horrific case. But I think, like a lot of people, I'm fascinated by the strange and the horrific because you want to know why. Like, why did they do what they did? And is there anything we can learn from it? So that's really the impetus for why I write these stories.
I get it. But, being able to not be all the time in Florida through the years, even all the radio stations, like morning shows, they would have these bits called, what happened in Florida. Because a lot of strange news comes out of Florida. And yeah. Honestly, I attribute that because of all the migration. You got people from the East Coast. Everybody comes down to Florida at some point or, moves down there. So it's not like true Floridians. It's just a smorgasbord of a lot of different people from a lot of different places doing a lot of crazy stuff. And Florida just gets the blunt, the bad, name from just like crazy stuff. I mean, from the, crackhead stupid to the horrendous, stuff that you're talking about right now.
Yeah, and you're right. And we talked about that too. I mean, I just like 1,000 stories just popped into my head right now that I could tell. But to wrap up the one point about why so many Florida stories make the news, I think we have just a really great public records law too. We call it Florida sunshine, being in the sunshine. And so we can request all sorts of public records, whether it's arrest reports or court records, all sorts of documentation is open to the public. So that's where you find those details. I'm not sure that Floridians are really any crazier than anybody else in the world. You just get to read about it. You can find out the details. As I start to cover crimes in other states, I realize it's more difficult to dig into their clerk of court's records, or more difficult to find those arrest reports. But in Florida, thankfully, we're like, here, check it out. Look at the crazy things that we did. But even still, Florida stories that people that are from Florida do crazy things in other parts of the country, and it still ends up a Florida story. And I just have to tell this one because, Florida man gets the reputation, but there was who was in Louisiana, and it made the news a couple of years ago. It's probably longer than a couple of years ago, but the older you get, it seems like only a couple of years. But she and her husband were traveling back to Florida from Louisiana, I believe it was. They stopped at a gas station and they had a camel that people could take pictures with and pet or whatever. And this camel sat on her husband and wouldn't get up, and he was screaming for help. And so she kept trying everything she could to get this camel up, and she ended up biting this camel's private parts. And he did move. I mean, the camel got up, and he got off her husband. So I guess in that regard, she saved her husband. But that's still a Florida story that happened in Louisiana. So I can't credit Florida's open records laws for getting the word out. It's just Florida people do crazy things, but I would like to think in that case she was motivated with a good reason.
I just think I could have resorted to different tactics, but she went straight for it. I mean, I could think of so many different ways to make that camel move, but I don't know. I guess she used.
Not worried about it, or just go. Be like, I'm sorry this happened to you.
Oh well, yeah, those damn camels. I mean, it's sometimes you got to walk a mile for a camel, but it's look. There's lots of crazy stuff that comes out of there, but you've pretty much seen it all. And being on your previous past, being on TV and things like that, that's a grueling schedule. I mean, especially morning television news. You have to. What time did you have to be up at the studio if you were doing mornings?
Oh, I got up at 3:00 in the morning to be there at 5. And then I think, after I got off the morning show, it started at 5. And then I think they started at 4:30 later on. I couldn't imagine. I mean, it is. I mean, it's enough to make you hate your existence, like getting up that early in the morning, you have to go to bed so early. That was when I started eating anything at any time of day. Like, it used to be breakfast foods for breakfast, lunch foods for lunch, dinner foods for dinner. But now it was like, whatever, time means nothing to me anymore. I can eat chili any time of the day, nachos all day long. It just didn't mean anything anymore. Time didn't matter. It's just like whatever I can do to stay awake,
Yeah, it's a tough schedule. I mean, it really is. Entertainment is, in whatever form, is not for the faint-hearted. I mean, it just is, especially if you're single, and you're young, and that's all you eat, breathe and drink it, and that's okay. But as time passes, you perhaps start a family and things like that, and it gets really, really tough to do. And I had people even when I was younger that if they didn't get a certain amount of sleep every night, they were a mess all day long. Whereas I would go 2 days straight because I had to, on things. But it's not easy to do. Not everybody can do that.
Yeah, no, sleep deprivation is the worst, and I get mean and angry. I'm probably more like the camel, wanting to sit on people and not get up because it's just doesn't put you in a good mood. But yeah, by the time I was on that morning show for like 5 years, and towards the end of that 5 years, I was like, whatever, I think I'm done with TV. I can't do this anymore. It's taking a toll on me physically and mentally. When you're worn out, you just don't have as good of an attitude about things. And then right about that time, they were launching a 4:00 newscast. So I applied for that and I got it. And then so for 1 year of my TV career at that particular affiliate, 18 years I was there, and I had 1 year where I had a normal schedule, which was like 9 to 5. So when I got the 4:00 newscast anchor position, I came in at 9, I reported during the day, I anchored the 4, and then I left. and it was wonderful. I had a life afterwards. But then they were like, oh, you're doing great at the 4. How about the 10? How about launching another newscast at 9? And it is wonderful. I love live television. You get it. You know what it's like. I mean, there's nothing like it. It's so much fun. It's exhilarating. You're sort of in the know and getting to be involved in all sorts of different things. But at the same time, it's a big sacrifice. You do have to give up time with your family. You do have to give up time with your friends. It does take a toll on your body to a certain extent. And, a couple of years into that nighttime schedule, I got married, I had a child, I had some major family changes. So I decided at that point that it wasn't worth it to me. And, the internet was starting to take over, and I thought, well, let me put my family first for right now, and I'll keep the television stuff on the back burner. In fact, when I left that station, I didn't even intend to do television anymore. But, as so much happens in life, I think what you're meant to do ends up falling in your lap. And TV opportunities came to me again in other ways. And I realized, I really do love this. I want to do what I enjoy doing. I want to do what I feel like I'm good at, but I also want to have that time to spend with my family and take care of my family. So it's still a constant balance. It's not like I've found the answer and it's all working out perfectly now, but it is much better than it was before. I do love the excitement of the daily newscast. I'm working for the Pensacola News Journal now as a newspaper reporter, but I say that loosely because really it's all changed. I mean, newspaper and TV, we could go on and on about the business models of both, but it's all merging and becoming the same sort of product. It's all online. They both use video. They both use pictures. It's all about just succinct storytelling conversationally so that people understand what you're talking about in a world where everybody's easily distracted.
Yeah, I don't think television and I think everything like your major television, I think they're struggling. NBC, CBS, ABCs. There's too many places to go to now. On the spot, you don't have to wait for their programming and the things are changing, but it's the way of the world, because I don't think there's any perfect thing to anything. I mean, with life struggles, everything is kind of hard. It is what it is. Paul is saying Mollye is going to make you look good tonight. Yes, I am in agreement. I am in agreement. Thanks for that, Paul.
Oh, I love him. Thank you, Paul.
One of your fans. One of your fans. Nobody holds back over here. There's it's just take it. But
do you miss Pensacola? How do you like? I mean, I'm sure I loved LA. Every time I've ever been out there, I love it. I love the weather. I love the people. I love the laid backness. I even dig the traffic. But how do you like it?
All right.
Compared to Pensacola.
All right, you got a minute?
Yes.
I think, hang on. Woo, smooth. Okay. I think that I hear people all the time. Again, I traveled a lot. When I was playing music, whether it was regionally, I told you about a band that I was regional in called the Pilots back in the day when I lived there. And we were every place you go to, every town, every city, every state, when you meet people, you're going to bump into somebody that's going to say, man, this town sucks, or this state is, it's just the way it is because they live there. I firmly believe that, when people go on vacation, they go for 2 weeks, you're seeing and doing the highlights of everything, and you're going, oh, it was freaking great. I mean, it was just awesome. I could live here, because you don't live here. So I'm pretty equal across the board with this. That's my theory, is that because, Pensacola, I love Pensacola, all right? But there's really nothing like the job opportunities. There's not a whole lot there. The Navy base was the biggest thing, and it's suffering in a lot of ways, but we got great beaches. If you could afford to be a beach bum, it's the best. It's the best of the best. And I love being there because I have a million friends, I do. So I split it up now. Things are just kind of that way. But over here in California, yes, I do believe that we have, you nailed the part about great weather. You nailed that on the head. We have amazing weather. That's why you pay so much to be here. But there's a lot of crap that's, once you get settled in, I mean, I moved kind of farther away from LA, North Hollywood, Hollywoods and all that now, because all my friends, when I first got here, the more money you made, you kind of got a little bit outskirtsy. And when you had to come in to do sessions or whatever you did, you didn't have to be at work every single day like clockwork for something. So it's just different. But I don't have the clips loaded because the next few weeks I'll be talking about things like Hollywood. And if you see what Sunset Boulevard, like once you get off of the main couple of blocks where, the Hollywood and Vine, where the Dolby Theater is, once you get away and from those couple of places, the Walk of Fame, the stars, you're seeing people sleeping on the streets, and it is insane. And I got videos, I just don't have them loaded up right now, but that's my 2 minutes of how do I think about Pensacola. And I think anywhere you live, you got to make the best of it, or it's up to you to decide whether you want to be, make it good or bad. And if it's bad, then move. It's that simple. But I do love Pensacola, and even with the downside of things, like again, there's a lot of stupid crime that goes on there, but it's a lot of good stuff too. So I tend to lean towards the good stuff, and I'm vigilant everywhere I go. I don't care where you live. So.
No, you're absolutely right. And we deal with homelessness here as well. But I have been following some of the homelessness issues in California just because I've been covering a lot of homelessness here in Pensacola. I think communities across the country are dealing with it. The economy has gone to crap in a lot of ways. It's the huge gap between the haves and the have-nots. And the middle class is all but destroyed, not to go down that route. But it's tough. It's tough anywhere you go. But I think one thing about Florida, at least until our insurance started skyrocketing, and now our property appraisals are just skyrocketing as well. But it is a beautiful place to live. It had been an affordable place to live. That's slowly changing. But people have been able to come down here, and I think that's partially why the Gulf Coast is so interesting. It's the kind of place where people come to escape, whether you're just going to escape on vacation or whether you're escaping crimes. I mean, Ted Bundy was captured here in Pensacola.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that when you were talking about names, Ted Bundy. I mean, even Jimi Hendrix was going to go down to Pensacola because he shot his old lady.
I didn't know that. That's right. That's hilarious. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, hey Joe, where you going with that gun in your hand? He's going down Pensacola way. So yeah, Pensacola. Look, I think Pensacola is a very popular place, but low key popular. It's
yeah. That's a good description because it's a little bit of like the redneck Riviera. Panama City gets that reputation, and but then you've got Destin in between Panama City and Pensacola, which is really blown up. I mean, I went to high school over there in that area. I was from Jacksonville. We moved to Bermuda for a few years because my dad worked for the Navy. And so we ended up in the Panhandle when we left Bermuda. And so I graduated from Okaloosa County, Niceville High School, and grew up just waiting tables around Destin, partying with people from Destin. And it was not the posh place that it is now. I mean, gosh, Britney Spears, I think Sheryl Crow, all sorts of celebrities have places there, and it's gorgeous. I mean, we talked about the Sugar White Sands and the Emerald Coast waters. I mean, it doesn't get any prettier. You're not going to find a prettier beach anywhere in the world than Northwest Florida, but there's a huge gap, like I said before, between the haves and the have-nots. I mean, they would have to ship people in just to clean the condos, and then you get into the human trafficking stories and all kinds of weird stuff that happens because of that. So anytime there's a lot of money, whatever city you're in, and people who want it and people who don't have it, there's going to be crime,
I love Destin, but it's gotten so congested, and there's you can't maneuver because that island, the strip getting from like Fort Walton to it's only so wide. The roads can't handle the people. And
correct.
I used to love Crab Island and things like that, but now it's turned into a fiasco, a circus over there.
It really has. The coolest thing about Crab Island now is, like you talked about, the hammerhead shark video that showed up, but I remember going to Crab Island. I remember hanging out there, and I thought, well, this is nice. This is awful. This is not a very classy thing to say, but I just remember standing there and being like, gosh, I don't even have to get out of the water to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? Like, it's just that kind of a place. You can just hang out and enjoy this beautiful spot and drink a beer or whatever and hang out in the water for as long as you want. But now it's just so crowded. And when I was growing up there wasn't much at all. There was like a Green Knight liquor store, where this is enormous Green Knight. And then there was like a restaurant called Fuddruckers that was further down. And those were like the only two places. And now it's just like you talked about, all built up. It's like when I grew up in Jacksonville, we would go down to Daytona Beach, and Daytona Beach was like the big place to go for spring break way back in the day. Dating myself, but like that's what Destin reminds me of now, is like that, just wall to wall condos.
The Green Knight, and like the back porch was the end of civilization. It was the end of civilization, and now you got to go out of Destin and go into Seaside and all those Miramar, the 30A. Yeah. I mean, it's built up so much, but it's just congested. I love the place. I truly do. I mean, but man, it's just gotten difficult to be, not sitting in traffic just to get 10 miles and taking 40 minutes to do 10. It's LA without the LA vibe.
Right. And that's what I do love about Northwest Florida. I mean, I know it has like a little bit of a redneck quality or a reputation, if you will, but they are really, at the end of the day, they're salt of the earth people, and they're good hearted. And it's really more Alabama than it is Florida when you compare it to the other parts of the state. I mean, you think of Florida, and it immediately makes me think of like a Tina Fey joke and how she described Florida compared to the rest of the country. But I won't say it. But it is like, it does get that reputation for being kind of, out of the norm, as we talked about. And you go further south and it's much more metropolitan, and you have different, there's just a more of a Hispanic influence with Cuba and all sorts of, like you talked about, the immigrants. But I grew up in Jacksonville, which was North Florida, and they were really more Georgia. Like I grew up hearing about the Georgia Bulldogs more so than the Florida Gators. And then I come over to Pensacola in Northwest Florida and Okaloosa County, and then later in Pensacola, and it's all about LSU or Alabama or Auburn. So it's just, that influence is heavier in the Panhandle. So you do have it's the buckle of the Bible Belt in a lot of ways. And I think that's another reason why I've enjoyed covering crime, because there is this very much black and white way of looking at things, good, bad, punishment, exoneration, which is great. You want to see people held accountable, but doing news, I realize there's just so much gray in the world. So where I may have started out saying, oh yeah, somebody should definitely be punished for what they did, and I still believe that to a certain extent, because of that, good-hearted, salt of the earth type thing, I also realize that people aren't necessarily doing a lot of these things because they want to ruin their lives or somebody else's. It's just human nature, and sometimes we make mistakes. But I do love the Gulf Coast for that reason. Good-hearted people with a lot of craziness,
Don't forget Gulf Shores too. I mean, they're right next door, and that's like the end of the sugar white sand, but the water's still pretty nice over there. And that place is built up, and a lot of, I know a lot of famous songwriters and stuff have moved over there on Ono Island and all those places, and because they have money, and I mean, because it's a great place to hang, and it's right next door, the opposite direction, which was really labeled that was the true redneck Riviera, the Floribama, which is great. My next door neighbors over there in Pensacola, they both of him and his wife work at the Floribama. It ain't nothing like the Floribama when I was a kid growing up. The Floribama was a little bitty shack, and, and so now it's a corporation,
It is, and that's a great description, because my roommate was one of the owner's nieces. Heather Gilchrist, her uncle Joe Gilchrist, was one of the owners for a long time, and God rest his soul, Joe recently passed, but he's the guy that smoked weed with Willie Nelson, and he helped kick off the whole, I mean, I don't think I'm letting the cat out of the bag on that one, but like he okay, good. So anyway, he was part of that whole songwriters festival that they hold. Right. They still hold it every year. But you're right. I mean, it's such a cool place. And then going back to the crime thing, I mean, there was a woman who, I think, God, there's so many crimes and they get confused in my mind sometimes, but she ended up getting, here is a classic Gulf Coast story for you. She, I think, killed her husband in some weird way. I'd have to research it, but then she hauled off with the kids. And like a lot of people, they come down to the Gulf Coast. And I guess that's because, like, in their mind, this is where the world ends. It's the furthest place they can go before they hit the water. Nobody will find them here. So she ended up getting arrested by the police at the Waffle House across from the Floribama with her kids. You know what I mean? Like that's just as Gulf Coast as it gets. But I love the Floribama. Many is the time that I have spent at the Floribama, at the Songwriters Festival, just having a good time, multiple rooms with multiple bands. But I remember what you're talking about when it was just like one place, but then now that they've expanded, and then they do the mullet toss, and that's kind of a fun thing too, tossing mullet.
Who would have thought? But yeah, and again, you just mentioned Waffle House again. Nobody understands the power of the Waffle House.
I love it. The Jonas Brothers do. They wrote a whole song about it.
Oh, we had a song back again with the band called the Pilots, because when we were on the road regionally in the Southeast at 4:00 in the morning traveling, we'd stop at the Waffle House, and those people that
smothered covered, baby.
That's right, and God bless the servers that work at the Waffle House having to put up with all the drunks of the world at from 1:00 in the morning to 5 in the morning. I mean, they all have earned their spot in heaven, because it's a story within itself. But again, if you don't understand the Waffle House, if you know. So.
It's true. It's true. I remember going to the Waffle House many times after concerts. Pensacola used to be the place to go for concerts. When you were in Fort Walton, you'd get bands that would come through at little bars, but Pensacola was like, I saw Depeche Mode there, Don Henley back in the 90s. That was like where you saw the bigger acts, and we would all stop by, my crowd would stop by a Waffle House on the way back. And that was back when they would only take cash. So many is the time that I would like look under the table and find like a 20 or a 10 or whatever. And I was like, oh, fine, my bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich is paid for. This is awesome. But now, like everything else, it's all gone plastic.
Salty Sleuth says the Awful House, which everybody knows that slogan. If you know.
No, it's not awful.
No, I know, but we all used to call it that. I mean,
Yeah, for sure. Because after you ate there, it felt awful. Yeah, for sure.
And last thing with the Waffle House, we're doing a lot of sponsors tonight. We're sponsoring, info for Pensacola and all these tourist towns. But the Waffle House at 2 in the morning, chances are all the windows are fogged up from the cold, because it's air conditioned, really cold inside and hot outside. So you drive by and it's got that same look, every single one of them, with condensation 3/4 of the way up all those windows. But yeah,
it's true. And I hate to I have another Waffle House story, but I remember going to see Leonard Skinner in 1993 at the Pensacola Civic Center, which they now call the Pensacola Bay Center. And across from the Pensacola Civic Center, you remember the Grand Hotel, which was the old historic train station and whatnot. So, I came over from Fort Walton with my pals, and we're partying down at the Grand, and then we go to the concert, and we come out, we went in, I have shorts on, it was like 80 degrees when we went into the show. You can come out 3 hours later and it was cold, it was snowing, and they called it Superstorm 93, and they were making like little mini snowmen on the steps of the Grand Hotel. And then of course we went to the Waffle House afterwards, and just what you were talking about, all that condensation, because it was warm inside that time and then it was cold out, and everybody's like writing inappropriate things and the condensation and whatever. But it was fun. I mean, Waffle House is a source of some good stories.
It's a staple of the Southeast and South, and again, always open. And they're your go-to for hurricane information. If they ain't closing, the hurricane is not bad enough, So, a lot of stories. I'm sure that I could probably just do a show, about Waffle Houses and go to all of them and just collect the stories, and that'll be a never-ending thing because it never ends.
That's a good idea, actually. Yeah. The awful Waffle House stories. I love it, but it is not awful. I love there. I still eat there all the time. I love the Waffle House.
Again, it's just a play on words that we all used to use. In fact, even there's even Gail, awful waffle. It's just the way it is. But yeah, again, if you grew up in that anywhere in the region, you'll know a Waffle House, and so there's always something to be said about that. But again, that's part of growing up in that area. I mean, at 2:00 in the morning, either that or the old it wasn't White Castle, it was what was those little square hamburgers that you ate when you were super drunk at the end of the night? Crystals.
Yeah. Sure. And chili cheese fries at Crystals are amazing. It's like the scattered, covered, smothered thing of the hash browns at Waffle House. Yeah, I love Crystals.
We're definitely going. Memory lane. We're going to that. Let's talk about your podcast.
Okay.
When did you start it? And what I know kind of you mentioned how you got started, but I mean with the Gulf Coast Confidential, let's talk about that because that's your big thing, and it really looks good. I've seen some of your stuff, and I mean it comes off well, it's presented well, and you're really good at it. But tell everybody, like how long ago you started, and really how you're digging in with this whole thing and where you're going with it.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for asking about that, Peter. No, I started it about a year ago. It'll be a year in October. So I'm planning like a little celebration of sorts for a 1 year anniversary. We've talked about how long I've been reporting on the Gulf Coast. And there's so many stories over the years that I remembered. I remember, we talked about the King brothers, and I wrote that book, A Perversion of Justice, about their case. Well, part of the impetus of me even writing that book is because I just knew when it happened, just even before it blew up nationally, that it was going to be a big story just because of the interest, immediately locally. And that was part of my interest in writing the book about it. One, I wanted to expose what I felt like was injustice to a certain extent of what was happening with the investigation, but also two, just because it was a fascinating story and I like the why. I'm a why girl. Why did it happen? Why did they do it? And I may never know, but I certainly enjoy trying to find the answers. So there's so many stories like that surface all along Northwest Florida, along the Gulf Coast. And I had them in the back of my mind, just, I want to tell people about this. I think other people might be interested in this. And so I'd been out of working for that ABC affiliate for a long time. I ended up working for other media for a while. Even, I hate to even say this because I know people freak out, but like I worked for RT America, which is, a newscast that was funded and produced by Russian, but it was for an American English-speaking audience. And, whatever you may think of the politics, and I certainly don't support that war, and I don't think anybody does, or if they do, that's a shame. But at any rate, I've never been too far from television. And then that ended, obviously, when they went to war for the Ukraine. I no longer worked for them. And they shut down that broadcast. But I had all these stories in my mind that I wanted to tell. I needed a creative outlet because first and foremost, really, with all my TV experience, I'm a writer. Writing is my first love. I love storytelling. I've been writing since I was in grade school. And so I didn't really even have a plan when I went to college. I was just like, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get a degree. And so I waited tables at a barbecue restaurant in Fort Walton Beach and lived with my parents to put myself through school back when you could do that and not be, decades in debt when you graduated. And then, fortunately, I was blessed enough to get hired on at the ABC affiliate in Pensacola, like pretty much right out of college or soon after. So I just had this plethora of stories of things that interested me, and I thought they would be interesting to other people who maybe weren't familiar with this neck of the woods, weren't familiar with some of the crazy crimes that I had seen and covered. And I thought that I had kind of an idea of maybe what, if it was interesting to me, I thought maybe it'll be interesting to other people. So I started playing with the idea of the Gulf Coast Confidential as a way to start sharing some of these stories. And I had also been working on that Adelot case for a long time, the case of Brandon Adelot, the 17-year-old who killed his mother, Sharon Adelot. It was just brutal, Peter. It was a terrible, terrible crime. He all but decapitated her on Christmas Eve in the doorway of her own home. He embedded 2 knives in her eye. They had to use orthopedic surgical tools to remove it. So I don't dig into these stories for the gruesomeness of it. It's more, again, I'm the why person. Why? That's just a terrible thing to do, especially to someone that you love, But then there's all kinds of crazy Gulf Coast stories that thankfully are not as gruesome, but are still the kind of things that make you go, Lord, what in the world did that happen? You have the Jesse Arbogast story. My God, this shark bit this kid and he survived, and his arm was transported by ambulance and his body was taken by life flight. So there's just a lot that I wanted to share to not only, interest people, but to share what life is like here along the Gulf Coast. So a year ago, I decided to start sharing some of these stories that I'd personally experienced or that I'd personally been interested in. And it has since expanded to other stories nationally as well. I do some of my podcasts with Pam Hill, who is the sister of Sharon Adelot. She is actually Sharon Hill Adelot. And she approached me several years ago about writing the story about her sister. So I'm still working on that book. We're working on that together. But in the meantime, I thought, the podcast will be a way to get bits and pieces of her story out, as well as tell some of these other stories that I've picked up and learned about and thought were worth telling along the way. So Gulf Coast Confidential is really my personal diary in a lot of ways of what I find interesting about the Gulf Coast, what I cherish about the Gulf Coast, what I think needs to be exposed about the Gulf Coast. And by doing so, I don't think the Gulf Coast is unique. I think the crimes that happen here, the good, the bad, and the ugly, it's happening in other cities and other communities. And these same issues resonate with people, not just the interest in the macabre, but the interest in justice. And what can we learn from this? How do you avoid having these terrible things happen to you? Nobody can predict that their son's going to get schizophrenia and kill their mom on Christmas Eve. but
Yeah.
there were domestic violence issues in that family before that event even happened. So what can we learn from some of these cases is really another big motivator for me doing this podcast.
Oh, your show comes off well. Again, and they're up on YouTube, right?
Yes, yeah, Gulf Coast Confidential is my YouTube channel.
All right, so people should go and subscribe over there, and to my show, please.
Yes.
But I've seen it, and I mean, and there's lots of people that do shows. Number one, I think a lot of people are just hooked on true crime. I mean, my daughter would tell me that her and her mothers were up, watching whatever, there's like true crime channels, so people love seeing that. It's like that morbid curiosity, I mean, as to the why. And again, it is why, because it's like, how do you do something like that? That's beyond at least anything I could fathom, or stomach or whatever. It is a big why, but your podcast, number one, when you told me that you had a podcast, or I was told you have a podcast, I thought it was a audio only podcast, but yours is visual. They get to see you talking about it, and with whoever you may have with you, and you have it also on audio as well, correct?
Yes. So you can find it wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. It's on most streaming platforms and also, of course, on YouTube. But I work with a great production team. I'm very lucky to have them, and I'm appreciative of the work that they put into it. And it's, like I said, I'm just getting geared up to celebrate my first year anniversary, and there's a lot more stories planned. Some of those that are coming up are just crazy things, like almost Wild West type things that happened back in the 80s and 90s. But there was a plane exploded in a fiery ball, like a little Cessna, over Pensacola back in 1989. And on board was an executive for Gulf Power, which was our local power company. And he was on his way to Atlanta because this company was under investigation by the IRS for basically funneling campaign contributions to candidates through vendors like public relations agencies, advertising agencies, to influence their vote, of course, to impact, their business. So this guy explodes in the air, and then the sheriff's office and another agency received this call right after the plane explodes going, well, the executive's name was Jay Corden, and the phone call, the person says, you won't have to worry about Jay Corden anymore. That's been taken care of. So there's just these crazy, and that's not even the only hit that's happened in Pensacola. I mean, there's been other stories that have come about where just rivalries and attempted murders, attempted hits on political rivals or business rivals. And so I don't think that the nature of a lot of these crimes has changed over the decades. I think people maybe have just gotten smarter about how they commit their crimes. But I just think it's so interesting, especially revisiting some of these past crimes in an era where there wasn't social media, where there wasn't the internet, and what people thought they could get away with. Nowadays, if you try to blow somebody up, they can look at your search history and be like, oh, well, you searched how to blow up a plane, how to make a bomb, but back then they were just flying by the seat of their pants. And there was no the investigators never determined that there actually was a bomb on board, but they said there was a fire. They couldn't determine the source, and it ended up bringing the plane down. But it's just those sorts of stories. That's what's in the future. I'm still working on some of those to produce here later, to put those out. But there's no shortage of stories here along the Gulf Coast, old or new. And again, they all relate to so many stories, I think, regionally as well as nationwide, because crime impacts people the same way. Nobody's unique in their motives.
I was going to say we're in no shortage of crime. You just hit that one on the head. But I think every town and city, it's just a matter of, do you know about it? I mean, there's crap that goes on everywhere. I mean, but people, I think, because we're more that area is more viable. I mean, it's just someplace you'd rather be, than North Dakota in the woods or something. Then so I think more happens. The odds of more happening is going to be there. But I mean, Mobile, God, and New Orleans, they got their hands. I mean, the murder rate in New Orleans is off the charts right now.
I know, and it breaks my heart because I love New Orleans. I mean, going back to what we were talking about earlier, when I was living in Jacksonville, growing up there, you hear about Savannah and Daytona Beach and more of the East Coast cities. Coming over to Pensacola, Louisiana, and Northwest Florida are, like this. They love each other. We have a lot of people that come over from Louisiana that vacation here. A lot of folks from Northwest Florida that go over to, Biloxi and gamble, as well as New Orleans to party or go to shows, which was my thing back in the day. I mean, my first introduction to New Orleans was Jazz Fest, and I went all throughout, every spring throughout my college years and had a ball. But you're right. I mean, it's just tragic. Like any big city, you're going to have crime, but when poverty strikes, it's just people do what they can to survive, and it just kind of turns into a downward spiral.
No doubt about it. And again, but I know we've been talking a little bit more about the harder side of things, but that's what your job is to bring awareness and these stories that are interesting. I mean, education, is power. To know that, okay, live your life. You can't live in fear, but crazy stuff goes on, and it does. So, but there is a lot of beauty to all these areas, and that's why everybody is there. But unfortunately, speaking of, all things must come to an end, and we're running out of time.
Say it as it so.
I know, exactly. But yeah, we are, and then that's a sad thing. But here's what I want to do. I want to tell everybody, if they want to see more of Mollye Barrows right there, they can just go to your website, and that'll bring you everywhere. Is that true?
Yes, mollyebarrows.com, and you can check out Gulf Coast Confidential on YouTube and just Google it, and it'll pop up wherever you listen to your favorite podcast as well. And Peter, thank you so much for having me on here. I really appreciate it. You've made it so easy, and I felt so comfortable. So thank you.
Again, I if it had not been, again, I may be I'm there a lot, but I don't keep up with everything that goes on there. And I'm really surprised, again, maybe because there's a little bit of a gap between us, but that I don't know you, because I feel like I know everybody and their sister in that area from growing up playing in bars and bands and, and knowing that, but especially since you were part of the news media down there. But I guess I must have been off that day or something, didn't get to meet you, but I will. But Paul, had Paul not mentioned it, we would not be sitting here right now. And I'm really glad that we did, because he was right. You are a plethora of information. You are a pro. You're good at what you do. And again, I urge everybody to go over to the YouTube and check out her Gulf Coast Confidential, because it's very well put together. It is no different than looking at, the 48 Hours or any other television show. The look, the vibe. Come on.
Thank you.
The look. Your guy. What was his name? James. Your production guy.
James Roy.
Well, he's got the right idea. I mean, the feel, the look. You know what I mean? It's soft. It's pro. It's not just. I just, when I was looking at it, I'm going, well, I'm not like looking at you talking through a computer doing a cheesy local commercial or something like that. You know what I mean? So
yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I want people to enjoy it and not be distracted by, poor production or poor, just, poor storytelling, if you will. So I do enjoy it. A big shout out to Paul Giro too for, introducing us and setting it up. And next time you come to Pensacola, we're going to have a bushwhacker and tell some stories with Paul. And maybe we'll recap. Maybe we'll even see Ray Wiley Hubbard. That was the last time I saw Paul.
Yeah, big shout out to Paul. Believe me when I tell you, Paul's my main man over there. He takes care of a lot of things for me, and I thank God for. I mean, he's been around me in my life, and we've been around each other since I was visiting there, because I had cousins that lived in the same neighborhood when I was in 6th grade, and I had met him. And then we moved there. We moved there several years later, and in that same neighborhood. And Paul's been a neighborhood friend that I have pictures like. He's kind of always been in and out of my life, and believe me, especially these past years, since both my parents are gone and all that. He oversees a lot of things. So big shout out to Paul and a big for getting you on the show. But even Ed says, "Great show. Mollye is the face of Pensacola." So I got the face of Pensacola right here? That's undeniable,
Ed's an author too, by the way. He's an investigator who wrote a story about As the Crow Flies. He busted a guy who was a drug dealer. So it was great. Smuggler.
Again, there's a lot of history and a lot of really valuable things that come through Pensacola and the people there. And that's why I used to see musician friends of mine, they're going, screw this place, I'm moving away. And, 6 months later, they come back with their tail between their legs. I never really came back that way, but I love that place. I will always love that place. And whenever, hopefully a long period from now, when I finally am not able to be on this earth anymore, I will be buried in that place, because again, I call it home, even though I was not born there. It is home for me since I was 15 years old. So, again,
it's a beautiful place to call home for sure. And we can't wait to have you back anytime you're ready.
Well, I'm in and out, but I kind of keep it on the down low because everybody starts going, oh man, you're in town and you didn't call me, It's like,
I understand. You just want to chill. Yeah, it's too much. To be popular and in demand is exhausting.
I'm not popular or in demand, but I'm very grateful because I've made a lot of friends and haven't done enough wrong to not have them as friends. I'm very blessed with all the friendships. I'd see people that were really having a hard time with their own lives, and I'd come in and my mother was getting sick, and they're going, Peter, man, if your mama needs anything, you just let me know. And I'm thinking in my head, dude, you are barely breathing on but yet they would do that for me. So believe me, and I think that faith and that love for all the people that I have is truly what has made it why I love being there so much, because I haven't done many wrong, or if I did to any, it was by mistake, and I apologize. But I just try to keep, life is short. Let's all we all just get along. It is right there.
I know. Just visit the Floribama and chill. Toss a mullet and relax and listen to a live band and enjoy ourselves. I agree. The Gulf Coast has a lot to offer, but so does LA, and you're rocking it. It's wonderful that we can still see you, catch up with you.
There's a lot of things. It's like, don't ask, don't tell, LA, but I've chilled since then. Well, actually in Pensacola too. So I was.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, but all good stuff. I mean, I don't regret any of it. I'm just thankful I lived through it. But anyway. All right, last
Gulf Coast confidential story, Peter. You just let me know when you're ready to tell it.
I'm ready. I just make the appointment. Let's just make the time. I don't know if I'm no, maybe not. Maybe not. Either way, last look right there, folks. Mollye Barrows, author, investigative journalist. She hosts the podcast of Gulf Coast Confidential right there, and she's really good at it. And the shows are great. Go check her out, and this show will live on too. So share. But again, I thank you for taking the time, because I know you got a kind of busy, hectic schedule too. You're a mother and you got to work, and we're kind of had to squeeze a little bit of getting around everything. But here we are, and it's in the can, so to speak. That's showbiz talk.
Woohoo! Well, thank you so much. I've enjoyed it so much, Peter. I appreciate it. And best of luck to you. I'm excited for all you're going to do. This is just fantastic, and I see great things.
We're friends forever now, so it's all good. But wave goodbye to everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right. I love you. Thank you.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye. There we go. Well, there she was, right there. Hang on one second. Woo! Good stuff. No, I was talking about the show. Pretty good, huh? Huh? Mollye Barrows right there. There's her website. Check her out. MollyeBarrows.com or www. You don't even have to put that in anymore. That's old school, which I still do, but I forgot this time. But she's got a website. That'll take you to everywhere she goes, or go to her YouTube and subscribe to her YouTube channel right after you subscribe to mine, or vice versa. I'm struggling. She's going to get really big because she's doing interesting stuff without getting banned. I have a bad habit of talking about things that some parts in this world just don't want you to say things, and so I get slapped on the wrist. But either way, she's got a great show going on, and I think that's going to pick up some traction, and then maybe you won't be able to get to her, but right now it's in its truest form. So I strongly advise that go check her out right there at www.mollyebarrows.com. Tell her you saw her on the Peter G Show. Let her know. I'll have her on again. We'll talk about some true crime. Right now, the first show when I bring on somebody, I like to do a little background. So we talked a lot about the area, because we both can relate. But I think a lot of you guys can relate too. And if not, go down there and check it out. It's a great place to go spend a few weeks. No doubt about it. If not the place. to go spend a few weeks. It's affordable considering, even though everything's going up, but it is what it is, and it's a good thing. So I recommend it. Peter G gives it 2 thumbs up. All right, listen. Speaking of YouTube, I'm going to ask you, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, why the hell not? Please just go over to YouTube, Google up or search Peter G Show. Hit the subscribe button. It's really super simple. I would deeply appreciate it. They have shadow banned me a lot and throttled me back because I'm a bad boy trying to talk about things that are truthful and, in my opinion, the truth. And again, there's a lot of censorship going on, and they kind of hit me because it's easy to stomp on the little guy. But if you keep subscribing to that channel, they will let me grow, and then I'll outgrow their objections, and they'll start opening up the the throttle to let me be seen a little bit more. But go do that. Again, I love you guys for taking the time to watch the Peter G Show. But if you don't have the time, you can take the show on the road with you. Put an earbud in your ear while you're driving to work, commuting. A lot of people spend a lot of time in their cars. Just put an earbud in your ear. Google Peter G Show podcast. Take the audio version with you. I try to be conscious of when I do my shows that you can listen to it and still get the big picture. Once in a while, I do some stuff that, I would like you to watch. Hard to interpret it, but for the most part, the shows are still very digestible from listening to them while you're at work or in the car or whatever the heck you're doing, running, exercising. Over 300 shows, all different kind of topics. Tonight, we're doing true crime. Another night, it could be alcoholism or narcissism, or I'm just bitching and ranting about current events, which I'll be doing next week. So you might want to tune in for that. I kind of get kind of animated when I start doing things like that, and I start frothing at the mouth at times, but I still think it's worthy of. I just try to bring things to your attention, to open your mind. Everybody's got opinions, and believe me, when they don't like what I'm saying, they let me know it, but that's okay. But we still need to get along. Division is not where it's at, folks. We all can't be, if we were all, honky-dory with everybody, we'd all be married together, but we're not. But we're all individuals, but we still got to, we're on one planet, so let's make this work. Life is short. Getting shorter, too. Anyway, I want to thank you for tuning in with Life of Peter G, the Peter G Show, right here every Wednesday, like clockwork, 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, and 9 p.m. on the East Coast. Definitely, God willing. I realize every day when I wake up that it doesn't have to be this way, and I do thank God for letting me have another day. Whether you want to believe or not, I figure it can't hurt. Lord knows, growing up, I'm losing friends as we get older, and things are happening, and people are getting sick, and, you don't have to be here, and it's over. It might be not over in a different way, but I kind of like life, and I love being here. So letting me be here to do this with you is definitely a blessing, and I thank you for you taking the time. I know life is full of choices. To sit and watch a long-form show, it takes a lot of dedication, but that's why I can't tell you enough how appreciative I am for you. And please hit the subscribe button. That way, we're going to stick it back to the man. I want to see you all here every week if possible, but if you can't, all the shows are on demand. You can catch stuff at your convenience. But I love when you tune in live. I had somebody tell me that said, I said, well, you missed the show, no big deal. You can watch it whenever it's convenient. They go, no, but I like watching it live. And that's kind of cool. I appreciate that. You can comment. And another thing, if you want to make comments that can be seen, please go and subscribe and do it on YouTube, because I have 3 different Facebook pages that this show is running live on right now. And 2 out of 3, I can't see your comments until after the show, and I have to go and find them to acknowledge you. My personal private page, it just won't let the comments be seen on here. Eventually, I'm going to start turning off those channels, and hopefully you'll follow and come on to the main channels, because I'm spread out all over the place. And the reason why I say this is all this stuff is because I have to. Because again, I'm all over the map, and I want you guys to start coming in closer. Let's all bring it to, bring it home, and hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and watch it from there. It's real simple. Even though I know you may be watching from Facebook or something like that. And if I turn off the Facebook channel because I'm going to have a show that's going to be, threatened by being banned, I'll tell you, and we'll go over back to Facebook. But please do it. All right. Again, this has been a PSA from Life of Peter G, the Peter G Show. I have to tell these things because sometimes people don't understand. I'm appreciative for all you got. Follow me on my personal page, but it's going to go away one day, folks. And I just want to bring you over because you're taking the time to watch, and I love you for it. All right. That's it. We're wrapping it up again. Thank you. And my name is Peter G. And just remember, more than anything, as we wrap this up, to be kind. Life is a bitch. It is. People are having problems. The struggle is real. I watch it every day on Facebook's, prayers for my mother, prayers I'm having surgery, so-and-so is suffering, somebody passed away. I get it. That's why I started this show, because I give a shit. I feel you. So I feel that. I've been through it. And I'm just here to say, you're not alone. We'll talk about these things. We share stories to let you know that you're not alone. So a lot of people are very private. They don't talk about things. I talk about my own issues in order to let you know that, like, nobody's perfect. Whatever your perception is over here, the struggle is real. It's nobody sitting on top of a high mountain looking down at the little people. It's not that way. I'll never forget my roots. I'm just you guys with a TV show. And that's all it is. So again, be kind. You don't have to take a bunch of shit from people, but you don't have to be an ass either. So take a deep breath before you talk. Life is short. My name is Peter G. Thank you for watching Life with Peter G, The Peter G Show. We'll see you again here next week, God willing. All right? As always, I love you guys. Share, subscribe, and most of all, peace out.
Peter G Show. Peter